So here I am today with Fake Prophet 005, and I've got this up. I want to show you this. So you can see here, I'm looking at earthquakes. Why am I looking at earthquakes? Because False Prophet 005 predicted the end of the world would start with a great earthquake on May 21st, 2011, in California especially. There were no great earthquakes in California at all in that year. In fact, it jumped from 2010 to 2014. So he wasn't even close. So, all right, let's find out who he is. You might have heard of him if you are not too young. His name's Harold Camping. And there's an article. You can go ahead and have a look at this. I'm not going to read this to you. I've already read it. I'm just going to point out a couple things from this article, but you can see the address up here, and I'll put the address also in the description so you can get to that and read it if you're interested. It gives a lot of details. You might be interested. It will help you to understand how false prophets work. So it is worth reading. Let's go ahead, and I'm just going to play 3 very short clips. They're only 2 minutes each. They're news clips. I'm just going to tell you who he was and what he said.
Billboards proclaiming imminent doomsday are popping up all over the U.S. Judgment Day is at hand, according to a Christian radio preacher in California.
Notice this is published on YouTube on May 20th, 2011. So this was published the day before the rapture was supposed to happen, according to this man that you see here in the picture, Harold Camping. He's a retired civil engineer. And the thing to notice is that he was very scientific in his approach. He's smarter than a lot of people out there. And he attracted mostly engineers to believe that the rapture was coming. That means not stupid people. So it was through intellectual means that he deceived these people. And they believed it. It wasn't just your average guy or average gal. He was actually attracting some quite intelligent people to believe the rapture was coming on May 21st, 2011. Let's listen to this.
If 90-year-old Harold Camping's Bible-based calculations are correct, you shouldn't be making any plans past Saturday, May 21st.
On May 21, there's going to be a terrific earthquake, way, way greater than anything that the earth has ever experienced, and that'll be the beginning of Judgment Day.
Camping's followers are spreading the word. Some have quit jobs or school.
Believes that only a tiny percent.
Notice, I hit the wrong pause button. So notice that he predicted that earthquake would happen on May 21st.
Than anything that the earth has ever experienced, and that'll be the beginning of Judgment Day.
So he predicted on May 21st a great earthquake that was greater than any earthquake that ever happened in history on the earth. And there wasn't one. Okay, that's what he predicted. And that would begin the Judgment Day. Let's listen to the rest.
Camping's followers are spreading the word. Some have quit jobs or school to prepare for the end.
Camping believes that only a tiny percentage of humanity will be swept up to heaven on Saturday. As for the rest of us, well, I'll see you in hell.
So you can see the mockers already, right? And they are mocking Harold, but in the same time, they're mocking the rapture, right? They're mocking the end times. So it's not just Harold they're mocking, like that guy, I'll see you in hell. You know, just that phrase itself is mocking God. So, and that just adds fuel to the flames, so to speak. Maybe it's a bad metaphor. But for Harold, because Harold would hear that and say, oh, they're just mocking me because I'm speaking the truth. No, they're mocking God. They're mocking God, and you're claiming to be aligned with God on this when you're a false prophet. So let's hear what he has to say. I'll just click
to heaven on Saturday. As for the rest of us, well, I'll see you in hell.
We have no plan B. It is going to happen. You know, the Bible is a very factual book. It has given us example after example of when God has predicted something, prophesied something was going to happen, however impossible it might look. It always has happened.
Except,
So he's tying his predictions to the Bible, saying that because it's happened every time in the Bible, therefore what he says is going to happen is going to happen. And take note also of his voice, the quality of his voice, because some have said that they were attracted to this radio station because they happened to tune in while traveling or tune in late at night or whatever, and they heard his voice. And so they were seduced by his voice to start listening. It's a very, very low, smooth voice. Of course, I mean, he's old at this point, so it's not as smooth as probably it was in the past, but still. All right, let's listen to this seducer.
Prophesied something was going to happen, however impossible it might look. It always has happened.
except when it hasn't, like the last time camping predicted Armageddon in 1994. And
yes, he predicted it in 1994. But this narrator on this says Al Jazeera. That's the icon, but that's not the station who actually did this originally, I think, because that's not an Al Jazeera reporter. And so this reporter is mocking the things in the Bible, using camping as an opportunity to do that, because camping had just said that everything that was said in the Bible happened. And this guy says, yes, except when it hasn't, and then pointing to camping's previous prediction, as if it is the Bible or equal to the Bible or has something to do with the Bible, and it doesn't. So that's reporters just taking camping as an opportunity to mock God. So that's clear. So I want you to see how these things work, right? Because they can just breeze right past you. It's like, in baseball, they'll throw a fastball or a curveball and it'll just zoom past you. You don't even know it's been thrown until it's already past you, right? And so that's what's going on with this whole dynamic here of the reporters who are scoffing and camping who's lying, and they're all attacking the Bible in the process. Camping's just doing it indirectly. So, yes, camping predicted the end of the world in 1994, and here he is again in 2011 predicting it once more. Let's see what he has to say here about 1994.
hasn't, like the last time camping predicted Armageddon in 1994, and nothing happened. He says this time his calculations of biblical dates and the Hebrew calendar have got it right. Leaders of various Christian churches denounce camping's campaign as heresy. Most Americans don't seem very concerned about Apocalypse Now.
They want people to freak out about it, and I don't believe it whatsoever.
So they called it heresy? I don't believe so. If they did, they're wrong, because it's not heresy, it's false prophecy. There's a difference between the two. So heresy has to come from someone who is an actual believer. False prophecy doesn't. False prophecy comes from a false prophet who must be stoned and put out of their community in that way by death in the Old Testament. Okay, let's go ahead and read some more.
I have no doubt in my mind that I'm going to wake up on the 22nd of May and have a wonderful day. What it is to me is that people that believe this are completely insane.
No, I live every day like it's my last, so no regrets,
No regrets. No regrets. She didn't mention Jesus at all, so she's probably just, maybe just your average person, doesn't care, right? The other guy, he doesn't believe in the end times at all, evidently, so he thinks it's insanity. Let's go ahead and see what the rest of the report says.
Completely insane.
No, I live every day like it's my last, so no regrets,
The preacher says he feels sorry for the scoffers.
I've been called every name in the book. I've been called Satan. I've been called the man of sin. I've been called a false prophet by experts, and it doesn't bother me in the slightest because they just don't understand it all.
Notice that. He was called false prophets by the experts. He called them experts. He was called false prophets by the experts, by what he considers experts, and it doesn't bother him at all. And he says why it doesn't bother him at all, because he thinks he's smarter than them. He says because they don't understand. He thinks they're smart. He's smarter than them. So he was, according to his employees at the radio station, he was obsessed with figuring out mathematically. For years he was obsessed with this, and every radio program that he aired was all about how he was figuring it out to give evidence and proof. And so he just every time was talking about numbers and calculations and all kinds of astronomical things as well. Yeah, so that means that he thinks that he's smarter than everyone else. But that also indicates that he's not really a believer, because he doesn't understand that the intelligence of a man has nothing to do with the spirituality of a man. It's not connected whatsoever. There's no connection between the two. And your connection with God and God speaking to you, he will tell you something, and then you will know, and you can tell people that's a prophet, okay? Especially if it's a future event. To me, it sounds like I haven't heard him say that God told him this. Okay? I haven't heard him say that. In any of this, I haven't heard him say that. I've heard him calculating it. I've heard him figuring it out. I've heard him announcing it. So if he hasn't said that God has told him this, then he wouldn't qualify as a false prophet. So far, what I hear is a man who overestimates his intelligence and has thought that he's cracked the code, and he's announced it with his own authority, riding on the coattails of God's authority. So he is predicting that something is going to come to pass. Now the question is he also misleading people to worship another god or other gods? That would be another thing that would qualify him as a false prophet. Let's listen to more.
And his followers plan to spend what they firmly believe will be their final hours praying and watching the destruction on TV. Rob Reynolds, Al Jazeera, Los Angeles.
Okay, so that's that one. Let's go ahead and listen to the other one.
There'll be a worldwide earthquake such as man has never seen.
Destruction and death everywhere.
They spent months warning the world of the apocalypse. On May 21st at 6 p.m., this man, Harold Camping, says worldwide destruction would begin. His message sent far and wide via broadcast from his small California studio. And predicting the end of the world didn't come cheap. Camping and his followers spent millions on advertising like the one on this billboard.
There's just no reason in the world, no possibility that it will not happen.
But 6 o'clock came and went. Although Iceland's most active volcano did start to erupt, there was no apocalypse.
I looked at all the scientific data I could find, like carbon-14 dating or potassium-argon dating.
The 89-year-old Camping had said some 200 million people would be saved. And those left behind would slowly die until finally the globe is consumed by a fireball on October 21st.
When they shall see the smoke of her burning.
It's not the first time this retired civil engineer has predicted the world would end. He said the same thing would happen in 1994. He was wrong that time, he says, because of a mathematical error. Nicole Grether, The Associated Press.
So, as dangerous as he was, we have to emphasize that we don't know yet that he's a false prophet. So let's watch this last one here.
He was the preacher behind those end of the world predictions.
97% of the people God will destroy.
I don't believe in such
Judgment days that kept coming and going.
The world did not end. We are...
But now the world has ended for Harold Camping long after he predicted it would. Predictions so wrong that he once said reporters would be thinking,
I'm ready to shoot myself or go on a booze trip.
He was wrong in 1994, and again when he announced the end would come May 21st, 2011. One follower spent $140,000 on ads warning of Judgment Day.
That's your life savings.
A good chunk of it. A documentary filmmaker followed Robert Fitzpatrick to Times Square.
Notice what it says here on this billboard. Let me see if I can get back to it. Here it says the end of the world is almost here. That's not their official one. Okay?
May 21st, 2011. One follower spent $140,000 on...
Okay, there's the official one. It says God is warning us through the Bible. Okay? So, it's not, even there, it's not saying that God said it. But he's predicting it through what he's read in the Bible, in the calculations.
On ads, warning of Judgment Day.
That's your life savings.
A good chunk of it.
Documentary filmmaker followed Robert Fitzpatrick to Times Square to ring in the end of the world. And of course, nothing happened.
I didn't water my plants. I didn't do the dishes before I left. I didn't expect to be going back home.
And though you felt sorry for some who believed, it was hard not to mock.
But this is my birthday. To put this on me is just weird.
Happy Doomsday to you, Genie.
The rapture, true believers ascending to heaven, was also mocked when it didn't happen, with photos showing clothing left behind.
But if it had happened, it might have looked like this.
When May 21st came and went, camping revised the date to 5 months later.
At that time, the whole world will be destroyed.
Eye-rolling reporters got a tongue lashing from a supporter.
You can't just turn your cameras on him when you have taken and run with this and you love this story because it's good for you.
He was 92 when his radio network said he passed on to glory this past Sunday after suffering from a fall last month. He did eventually apologize for his prediction, saying, "We tremble before God as we humbly ask him for forgiveness for making that sinful statement." His own reports of his death were always premature.
But I'm not going to be here after October 21st.
Jeannie Mo, CNN, New York.
Okay, so let's go ahead and look at one more thing. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and try to close this up, and I just want to emphasize that, yes, he's using false prophecy and false teaching together in a very interesting way to avoid being judged. It's a very smart move, but it's not going to work. So if you read through this article, you can see the address up here, so you can type that into your browser. I'll put it in the description as well. It goes through some things about Harold Camping. He's not a trained Bible scholar, but he does describe himself as one. He claims insight into the Bible that allows him to calculate the rapture. And he teaches that it's in the Bible, and he has a mathematical system for it. And evidently he's the only one who has that. So it's some sort of secret knowledge, and not so much well, still secret because people look at it and they can't figure it out. I guess that doesn't mean it's secret, right? Definitely convoluted. He's teaching that that's what the Bible says. So he is a false teacher because he's claiming that the Bible teaches that that the end time will happen on May 21st, 2011, because he's calculating it from the scriptures. So he's claiming that the scriptures are saying that. So he is a false teacher, at least. The fact that he's predicting the end times, instead of saying that God told me, doesn't absolve him of being a false prophet, because he's calculating it as a false teacher from the scriptures, therefore God told him. So he still qualifies as a false prophet in a very, very, very sneaky way. So don't miss that. Don't let that pass you by. He thinks he's smarter than everyone else because he's cracked the code of the end times in the scriptures. And this is important to understand that mentality, because now what we're seeing in most of these, not all, but most of them, like false prophet 001 wasn't that way. He didn't think he was so intelligent he figured out it, cracked it, right? Some of them say, well, God told me, and therefore that's the end of discussion. God told me, I heard him, I know it's God, I know what he said, and that's it. God said it, it's true. So there's no talking to that person at all. No asking him questions even about the quality of this prophecy and the quality of his conversation with God. Whereas other people, and I've shown you one of them, has an extensive, elaborate timeline that she figured out of two Jesuses happening at the same time, if you remember that. I think that was false prophet 007 It was 2 or 3, I don't know. But here's Harold Camping, and he's done the same thing. So you'll find one of two approaches. Either they'll say, well, God told me, therefore you can't tell me any different. God told me, I know him, I hear him perfectly. And so you can't tell me any different. You can't question it even. Not because they will say that they're not perfect, yet they'll say that they know for sure, without a doubt, that it was God, and they can't make a mistake in hearing God, which means they are perfect. And then you have the other type of false prophet who will think they're so intelligent that they've calculated something out, or they have some special things they put together and they can go, boom, there. Right? And what happens with them is that they will then just say, well, I'm just human. I'm not perfect. Even Camping said that. He says, I'm not a genius. And the woman, Rapture at Twilight, she also said something similar to that. Well, I'm just human. I make mistakes. No, you're a false prophet. False prophet is someone who has made a mistake that is absolutely warranting death according to Scripture. You have misled the people of God into thinking that God said something. And remember, when God says something, it happens. And when you lie to the people about what God said, that's the ultimate lie. So whether you're a false teacher or a false prophet, and Harold Camping has done that in 2 ways and married those. So he qualifies to be on both of our lists as false teacher and false prophet. And all I have to say is just avoid that radio station, because they're still airing his broadcasts, even if they're cutting out all of his prophecies and just airing his teachings. Still, he is a false teacher. And even if he wasn't considered a false teacher, it says, do not hearken unto the false prophet. That means don't listen to him in anything. So you just cut out that radio program and don't listen to it. If you ever hear Harold Camping speaking on the radio, just turn the dial. Don't go chasing down his teachings or anything to see what he was teaching, right? Because then you're directly disobeying God and what he said in the Bible. And I already showed you that and how to identify false prophets. You can go watch that video. So you stay on the straight and narrow, right? So Harold Camping's up here just to warn you and also to show you how they can work, especially when they got lots of money behind them. He had, and you read these articles, he had hundreds of millions of dollars behind him. That one guy you saw in New York, he was the largest contributor. It was $140,000 of his own money he gave for the advertising of the end of the world. So he didn't even work for Camping. He had nothing to do with that so-called ministry. He was just a guy in New York, just a worker who believed it. So, but you keep on the straight and narrow with God. And may the Lord bless you as you seek him with all your heart. Remember to subscribe down below and like the video and share it on your Facebook and other social media. And then make a comment, whether a question or a comment. We read all of them and we try to respond to all. Get on over to our website, The Rooted Word, and start reading the translation and also the articles we've posted. It's at therootedword.com, therootedword.com. And may the Lord bless you as you seek him with all your heart.